right, what's up? It's Rob Cressy, and we are currently in the car on the way back from Arete Syndicate Live, going back to Chicago. I'm with my man, Joe from Rowboat Creative. Joe, give yourself a quick intro of who you are and what you do.
What's up, Rob? This is Joe from Rowboat Creative. We're a custom apparel and branded item marketing agency. We're working our way into experiential marketing and all sorts of other lanes, trying to carve a niche for ourselves. But we started all out with custom branded apparel and just rode that wave to wherever it took us.
All right, so we just got back from an incredible experience, and there's several things that I would like to talk about on this podcast. One, the fact that we are recording a podcast in a car and taking immediate action on something that we've learned. Two, our experience at Arete Syndicate Live, something that neither of us knew what to expect. And three, you and I being in a car together for 10 hours in the infancy of our relationship and everything that ensued from there. So, which area would you like to start? I'll let this be a choose your own adventure.
Well, the best part was I had no idea what this was supposed to be at all. I just got an email from my business partner, Lucas, where he just said, I wanted to go to this event, but I can't make it. Do you want to go instead? And I was like, sure. I didn't even ask what it was or anything. I just wanted to jump on the chance to go to do something, because Lucas is always doing all this super interesting stuff, and I thought, if it was good enough for him to suggest, I thought I'd just jump right in.
All right, so you're like, boom, I'm going to go do this, and then you pick me up at outside in the West Loop, and we get into the car and we're like, all right, what's up, man? And we just start this, what becomes a blossoming friendship in literally like 2 seconds, because we hadn't had a ton of interactions before.
For sure.
From the stuff that I'd purchased from Rowboat and through Lucas. Obviously, I knew you and we'd said what's up, but never to a point where we've gotten to really know each other.
Yeah, for sure. It never really went past my office. Just, hey, Rob's coming through. You want to ring him out or something?
Right, just like that.
Yeah.
So it gave us a great opportunity to chop it up about music and entrepreneurship and what's going on in our business lives.
For sure.
In these coincidences after coincidence of the things that we talk about and the things that we've experienced in our lives, many of which then we saw come to fruition during the event or at the event. So let's talk about the event itself. My expectations going into this were, I knew it was going to be incredible. I was super excited for it because of my experience in the Arete Accelerator. Mm-hmm. And I was really excited for you.
For sure.
Because I knew what you were about to experience. And it was even more interesting that you had very little background on anything going into this. But I knew your entrepreneurial chops, your creative chops, the way that you think, and it was like, man, just hearing the way that you're talking about the stuff you guys are doing, I knew this was going to be just straight money. So take me into your thought process from when it's 8:15 and we're waiting to get into the doors to get into the ballroom where the event's happening. So what are you thinking at that moment? Because it hasn't started yet, but clearly there's something noticeable about to happen.
Yeah, so I knew about Mylett. Lucas had sent me some links before. They just sort of sat there, and it was one of those, I'll get to it when I get to it kind of things. I knew it was supposed to be awesome. So I literally wanted to hear a hair of it before I showed up, so it wasn't a total shock. So when I was rushing over to come pick you up, I tossed on an Mylett podcast, and I heard it, and I saw where it was going. I saw it was like an inspirational kind of band together and, share knowledge kind of thing. So I had been part of something like that before, and it's that kind of stuff, me coming from an art background, and yes, I know I've been doing business now for 13, 14 years or something like that. Even though I've been in business, it's sort of all just fallen in my lap, and I know that I have to be able to, if I'm going to be in this, creative space, I also have to run a business. I have 24 employees that work for me, so I do have to get my head in that game a little more. So as of late, I've been trying to step out of my comfort zone and go and do things that are more like, if someone were to 20 years ago say, do you want to go watch an inspirational speaker? And someone told me I would say yes. I'd be like, there's no way that that's going to happen. So the first time someone said, Lucas invited me to this other thing, and I just jumped on it without asking what it was, and was pleasantly surprised to see a bunch of like-minded people, totally driven people, almost like we were talking about, was it the Blind Melon video where that little dancing bee girl was all on her own and no one understood her, but then they opened the gates and there was a whole room full of dancing bees. I know that I should be surrounding myself with more entrepreneur, go-getters, people who actually get me. It was almost like going to a Alcoholics Anonymous meeting where people could relate to me.
Right. And what was unique for my experience is that this is the first time that the Arete Accelerator was able to bring the community together in person. So up until that point, and I believe it started in June, don't quote me on that, sometime around then, and I've been part of it, and we've got this Facebook group where we all interact, and I had the opportunity most recently to meet some people from Arete when I was down in Miami for the 10X Growth Conference, and it was great to actually see those people. Like you said, there's my bees. I was like, oh man, we're all part of this thing. This is really cool. But this was the next level because we were all there specifically because of Arete. And the people there, one thing that Andy and Ed said before the conference, they're like, listen, one, we want you to wear your Arete gear if you have some. And this is very limited, very few people have it. And then two, I want you to go out of your way to talk to people who aren't part of Arete to make them feel welcome.
For sure.
Because everything's a representative of the brand. And we've all been an outsider in something. So I went into this with this mindset of, all right, I'm going to make every single person I interact with feel comfortable.
For sure.
I'm going to engage with them. I'm going to be present. And the community of people were incredible. And it was so like-minded that every speaker got a standing ovation. The energy was always there. The people were always friendly. I was so impressed by the caliber of people that were there, and I was incredibly inspired by hearing the variety of stories of how these other entrepreneurs and people in Arete built their businesses and what they're working on. And it immediately, the vibes were just so good, and then it started, and it was like boom shakalaka. Andy and Ed come out, the music is straight bumping, and the first 2 hours, immediately, it was just straight fire.
100% agreed. That kind of stuff, when someone is speaking and it feels like they're speaking directly to you, it just flies by. Like we were saying, if we weren't interested in it at all, that might have seemed like a lifetime sitting in there. But I felt like I walked in and it was boom, it was lunchtime. Boom, it was over. And then I was like, man, that came and went so fast, because I really felt like everything that they were saying, it was stuff that I know in my back of my mind I should do, but watching them motivate you and trying to keep that fresh in your mind, that drive that got you to start in the first place, just trying to fire that back up and get you on a regiment to keep your head in the game and surround yourself with other people who are also in the game.
And I want to add another thing. So it wasn't just motivation and rah-rah, because that really is expected going into this. In this room of people, there's not going to be hand-holding, and they even one of the questions almost was like this: if you started over, what would you do? It was just like what you just learned in the event.
Yep.
So there was a big tactical portion of this. So it's like, all right, guys, here's the mindset, but now we're going to teach you some things that have helped us build our businesses.
For sure.
And that's, for me, that's probably the biggest thing that's part of this, because it's now, listen, this is how they've built 9-figure businesses. And these are the steps and things that you should do. So what was the number one action item that you're going to be taking away from this that you learned?
Well, one thing that really stuck out to me, actually, when you got up and you asked that question.
And what was the question?
The question was, does this look infected? No, I'm just kidding. The question was, now that we have, this is towards the very end, with the Q&A, they close out the Q&A. The question was, now we have all this information, because they really did. They broke down, you want to do podcast, go to this site, here's how you make the account. You want to write a book, go here to this site, dictate it here, take it to this place, have it edited. Boom, 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 boom. Step, step, step. Take pictures of slides, take pictures of slides. Then we have so much information that you brought up a great question. Now that we got all this information and you know, we're all amped up and everything, once we get out of here, how do we move on this without it just being information overload? And it wasn't Ed, what was the other? Andy. Andy said, well, first of all, what I would do is just everything we talked about. And yeah, they had their joke and, you know, yeah, it was funny. But he said what I would do was all those things that you learned, just go do them, and do them when, do them now. And I know myself, I have a million great ideas, and everything is, I'll get to that when I get to that, but every time I look up, it's a different year. I can't even figure out, you know, what day it is anymore, because the time is just flying. So the next morning, I woke up, this morning actually, before we took off, and I thought of this, I remembered a conversation I had with someone at the bar. We met a couple actually from Mexico who had moved to Oklahoma, and he said that he grew up dirt poor. And, you know, he didn't realize he was poor until he went to school and saw people who started having money. And he realized that he didn't want to be like that, and he didn't want his, future family to have to live like that. So he said that he started doing all sorts of things, you know, to make money, made his way to the U.S., and he met a guy in a restaurant who would come in and was a big baller guy. And he would, you know, drop cash. And the guy came up to the fellow that I met at the bar and said, you know, you look like you got a head on your shoulders. Read this book called, what was it? How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Yep, that book. And I thought of this in the morning when I woke up, and I remembered that, was it Andy who suggested that book too?
Someone did.
Someone did. So I woke up in the morning and I was thinking, I learned all this stuff. What do I do with it today? And I thought, well, look what it did for this guy that I met at the bar. He said it changed his life and put him on a path to be totally motivated to move forward. And then I thought of the words of Andy, do it when, do it now. So I just hopped on at, 6 in the morning. Instead of staring at the ceiling, I hopped onto my Apple books and bought the book and dug 30 pages deep before you even woke up, Rob.
I absolutely love that. It makes me proud because it shows, one, you taking something and implementing it. And it is the biggest separator between those who are great and those who are not. And it's living in action. And you hear the stuff and it's like, all right, well, just go do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, is it really that easy? And the answer is yes, it is really that easy. Because you could have just opened up Netflix or whatever, comic book or anything that you wanted, but instead, that's the conscious decision that you made. And I like to think that that's how momentum starts to begin.
For sure.
Because you think to yourself, the next time that happens, when you're like, oh, I should do this. Are you going to do it, Or are you going to let the bitch voice inside of you say, no, I'm not going to do it? And after this event, it's, no, I am going to do this, and I'm going to do this in a variety of areas and really just crush it and step my game up to a next level.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is I do that in other areas of my life. I just don't do it when it comes to what I consider work. Even though it's not really work to me, it's my craft that I've been doing forever. I think of it like a 9 to 5, even though I'm there 9 to 5 to 5 to 9 to 9 to 5. I never leave. But to me, I get caught in it's just something I do, and I forget that this is like, an entity that my partner Lucas and I built. But I don't apply my go-getter attitude to business the way that I do to my passion projects, such as music and stuff. So I'll work all day, all night, and then I'll come home and I actually have a silent drum set that I could play through the night because I know that's the only time I got. And that for me is a do it now, but I need to start applying some do it nows to business.
Yes, absolutely love it. So let's talk about our blossoming relationship of things that have happened. And I think one area which really helped propel this was a mutual love of music.
Oh, yeah.
That we have driven or will have driven for 10 hours together. And I legitimately had fun driving from the second that we started. Literally, it's like, what would you like to do? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just going to go hang out in the car with Joe for the next 10 hours.
Yeah.
Because we're just listening to music. We're chopping it up nonstop, getting to know each other.
Hell yeah.
It's been so enjoyable. I've really enjoyed with me having you as my guest, getting to introduce you to every single person that I met.
Yeah, no, it was great. Because, something like that, I have an issue, which is sort of about this mental toughness thing. I always feel like I don't belong somewhere, but you did a great job of breaking down the wall. And first of all, everyone knew who you were. I think at least 10 times yesterday, people came up and they're like, Rob. And after they walked away, I was like, you know that person? You're like, never seen him. So, I was like, this guy is dialed in. People respect him. And for you to vouch for me like that, I thank you. And thank you for bringing me to this.
You're welcome. It was, for me, a life-changing experience, a mindset-changing experience. And I think it's because I go in with a willingness to have my life and mindset changed.
For sure.
I'm very binary in how I see this. Mm-hmm. And I always make the analogy, I'm like Neo in the Matrix, where all of a sudden he's like, I can learn judo, and boom. So when I'm at this Arete Syndicate live event, I'm just sitting there like Neo in that chair, just soaking up all of this stuff, because Andy even said it during one of his talks. He's like, it is this easy.
Yes.
But we make it harder, but it really is this easy because you just keep taking action. You keep taking action, and you start doing these things that you're taught, and then all of a sudden you rinse and repeat. And I think the challenge a lot of people run into is going to be the consistency of all of this.
For sure.
And for me, I always like to think that I break it down into the micro instead of, oh my God, there's all this stuff that I have to do that I've learned here. Instead, as Ed said, when I asked my question of how should we tackle this, he said, write your top 3 takeaways from the event that you're going to be doing, and then write the one down that you're going to do immediately.
Yeah.
And when he said that, one, I asked the question, so he's telling me what I should do. So I'm an idiot if I don't listen to the advice of the question that I asked from a guy that I respect.
For sure. Yeah, I really related. At one point, I can't remember if Ed said it when you asked your question, but he said it's sort of like when he was talking about that house, when he had to knock down that mountain. Said it was $300 a half hour to jackhammer away this mountain, and it was like a couple months worth of work, and in the end they had all this rubble, but then they took the rubble and built the bed for the house. So it's sort of like we have all these action items, you have to jackhammer away at it, take all crumble it all into tiny pieces, and then take everything you've done and build, like, use that as the base for what you're about to build. So yes, there are a million things, and it's super overwhelming, but it's like, trying to empty out an ocean with just a shot glass, but it can be done. And seeing guys like that who have achieved it like that is super interesting. And, to be around other people who want to hear that kind of thing, because I believe that we're all there being told what we want to hear because we know it's right, but when someone that is successful tells you it, you take it to heart. So I was just, I really enjoyed being there, and I'm almost glad I didn't know too much about it at all.
One thing that I want to talk about is me asking a question. So for the last hour and a half of the event, they're like, we're going to do a Q&A. And Steve Holbrook, who is the MC, who is an amazing guy, one of the most inspirational figures out there, says, all right, if you have a question, stand up. And with this, I had no intention of asking a question.
You became the guy with the white hat.
I do have the mindset, though, of always pushing myself to do things that maybe you don't want to do, or you see an opportunity.
Yep.
So let's call it just a handful of people, a good handful, stand up, and he's listing, I believe, like 20 people.
Yeah.
He's like, you and you and you and you, and then he's getting to like the very end.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, I just stand up.
You were already up. You were on your way sitting down, and he's like, and the guy in the white hat.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, boom. I was the last person that he selected. Yep. And he actually selected me over the person in front of me who was stood up before me. And he's like, boom, you in the white hat.
Yeah.
And here's the beautiful thing. Because of where we were sitting, I was at the formation of the line.
Yep.
So I became the second person to ask a question.
Yep.
And my mindset in this is, you would love to have the opportunity to talk to Andy or Ed. And I did not have a question.
Yeah.
So when I stood up, zero question in my head. Now that I'm selected, I have, from getting out of my chair to walking in line, to think of the question. And here's a quick funny thing. So the girl in front of me, like, I'm just trying to hear from the person who's leading where I need to go and stand.
Yep.
And in that process, the girl in front of me asks a question. But here's the thing. Did she ask the question that I want to ask?
Oh.
Like, what if all of a sudden they spend 5 minutes answering a question, and then I'm like, hey guys, what's up? I'm Rob Cressy.
What she said.
Right. So all of a sudden I had to start listening, because here's the thing. They then say, all right, go 10 or 15 feet behind her and just stand there.
Yeah.
Actually, they said 2 feet, but I did not do that. They said 2 feet behind her, which would have been a super tight line.
Yeah.
No, I gave it like 20 feet. So now I'm just standing in the middle of the conference room behind the girl. It's just her asking the question. I'm staring at the microphone. So I'm like, all right, I've got to create a question for this. And I remembered at lunch, the same couple from Oklahoma that we had talked to.
Yeah.
I was like, I asked them what they thought and their takeaways, and then sort of like one of the girl mentioned, I don't know how, there's just so much information, it's overload.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, cool. Well, she had that question, so I thought to myself, I'm sure other people in this room have this question, because, oh, by the way, I know that I've experienced conferences like this, and I go through a similar mindset and question. So I was like, I'm going to make that my question.
For sure.
Because I always believed it was the one thing that if they had like a, listen, we've structured this so well, we have a PDF file, or take a picture of this screen right here that says, here is the top 3 bullet points or action items from each of the people. Obviously that's super specific, but I was like, that sort of analogy. And in doing so, little did I learn until after the fact, I'd asked a question that benefits the whole room.
For sure.
And one of the things that was enjoyable for me is, one, I'm very aware of my surroundings at all times. And as I asked my question, I heard a guy to my back right, I'm guessing no more than 2 rows and 3 people in away from me, who said, "Great question." So that made me feel good. And then the people who came up to me afterwards saying, "Hey, thank you for asking that question. I was thinking about that as well."
Yeah, you're a true man of the people. You asked what is on everyone's mind, because if we all were Ed or Andy, we wouldn't all have to be in that room. So obviously, a lot of this stuff could be pieced together from searching on the internet and this and that and the other, but we are all there because we want to execute. I mean, I was there because I not unknowingly showed up, but, everyone in that room has an execution issue. Otherwise, we would all be having our own show.
Right, and we could all get better. So even if you are crushing, that doesn't mean, because even Ed said that. He's like,
always be learning.
He's like, I've got 5 houses everywhere. And then the CEO of Apple moves in next to me. He's like, he's worth $2 billion. And all of a sudden, Ed's like, I don't feel so big anymore.
Yeah.
So, Joe, I absolutely loved this experience with you. My vibes are so good right now. I'm looking forward to continuing this energy with tomorrow and even today. I'm just so driven to create the world in our image, and you and I already have action items of things that we're going to do together, and we've created this podcast together now, and we're going to do some stuff with events together.
Definitely.
And you're going to help me get a Spotify site up so I can start selling apparel again for Bacon Sports. So I want you to leave with some last thoughts. It can be about Arete, your experience, your recommendation for others. That tell us anything that you want about what you experienced.
Well, what I could say is I just know what has helped me, and I have always just thought, the way that I always think is, if I don't do it, no one will. And, that's how I get through working, nonstop. Like I was telling you, sometimes I look up and it's 1 a.m. and I haven't eaten breakfast yet. But I need to harness that energy and give myself a little kick in the ass to push myself to do a little more. Like when we were driving up here, I was telling you just some tricks that I play with myself, where starting, last year, I started analyzing when I would say I'm driving down the street and I see someone doing something ridiculous. I think to myself, look at this jackass. Then I think to myself, why did I jump to that immediately? So I started doing things like, I saw my daughter take improv classes, and I thought to myself, man, I would never in a million years do that. Then I thought to myself, well, now that's my test to myself. I had an immediate reaction of hell no, so now I'm going to throw myself into it, and now I got to do it. So, and then when we get to the event, that was like a main thing. They call it your inner bitch voice, which I have actually started, for the last year, even before I even heard of anything about this, started immersing myself into stuff that seemed totally ridiculous upon first, meeting of whatever the situation is. So like I was saying, that my other daughter is a daredevil, and she went tightrope walking, and I thought to myself, no way. And I thought to myself, well, now I got to do it. So I went through it and I did it, and I was like, that is insane. So even just being able to conquer your fear of fear, just totally put yourself in place, knowing that whatever you are terrified about, the reason you have that immediate reaction is a action item for you to conquer whatever that irrational fear is. So when I got there and they were saying that kind of stuff, yes, that is already how I'm living, but it is very reassuring to see that that is just part of a human experience. Someone else completely came up with that all on their own. And it's very reassuring to me that other people share these things that they have to overcome. And like they said, mental toughness is not like an innate thing that you're born with. It's a honed skill.
And for me, it is all about action. It is always all about action. And a great example of this is this podcast right here. You and I talked about, oh yeah, let's get together, let's do a podcast. So that would have happened, but eventually you're in a different part of town than I am. We get back, we're both busy, all this stuff going on. So sure, we could have made it happen. Or we could take Ryan Stewman's advice. And what Ryan said is, listen, you can create a podcast on your phone, because I used to go during my lunch hour and record a podcast on my phone, AKA the mobile unit. He's like, here's how you do it. Well, guess what? We are living in action right now. So for everyone who says, I don't know how to create a podcast, it's going to take too long. Literally, Joe and I have a phone in between the center console as we are probably 32 miles from Chicago, and I'm just going to take this audio, I'm going to chop it up and turn it into the podcast. And the beauty of this is the best podcast. You know why? Because it is raw, and it is real, and it is fresh in our minds. And the episode that we can do right now compared to the one that we would have done a week or months from now, completely different. And I want this to be an inspiration to others out there who hear the action items of things that you can do. Just do it immediately. Don't worry about the perfect way for it to happen. That you can do all of the things that they say in there, as long as you, like you did getting the book, and like me doing this podcast right now, you just take action and make it happen. So Joe, thank you so very much for being part of this journey with me.
For sure. Thank you. We will always have hip hop as our main bond.